All right, motherfucks. In the last video, we talked about why Karrion Kross still sucks and the fact that in the last 10 months, he hasn't lived up to any of the hype that people gave him on the internet, right? I don't know how the smarks feel about him, but a lot of the people that like my shit seem to like Karrion Kross. Don't know why. Don't really care anymore. It is what it is, cucks. It is what it is. Like him if you want. I'm just saying he's not going to be a success. Which brings me to the real point. The real point is this. We have to dissect and discuss what does and does not make an NXT wrestler successful. This is important because NXT is the first step to getting the next big thing. And people look at NXT, right? And then they say, oh, this guy's going to be huge. That guy's going to be huge. And for the most part, like 95% of the time, people are completely wrong about it. Like 100% wrong 95% of the time, motherfucks. So think about all the people in NXT that were supposed to be the next big thing. You know, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Nakamura, Hideo Itami, Bobby Roode, motherfucks, Finn Balor, you know what I mean? Samoa Joe, Keith Lee, Karrion Kross. Like, none of these guys have or will ever become the next big thing. It's just not in the cards, as Scarlett Bordeaux would say. I didn't see it in the cards, motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if Ariel was reading the cards, she'd be able to see it because she is better than Scarlett. Now, with all that being said, what does determine if someone's going to be good when they get out of NXT and go to the main roster? Okay, first of all, I have looked at this very carefully, and I believe I've come with some of the answers, right? Answer one, the person's time in NXT must be limited. All right, that's probably the most important thing. If someone becomes an NXT journeyman, like Adam Cole and Tommaso Ciampa, the probability of these people ever becoming anything special is very, very low. You know, Adam Cole, if he goes to Raw, he will find a way back to NXT a few years later. He might even have some success on Raw. He might become like Intercontinental Champion. He might even one day become World Champion. But eventually he will find his way to NXT just like Cuck Balor did, right? The amount of time someone spends in NXT is indirectly commensurate with the success that they'll have on the main roster. Like, Kevin Owens is a perfect example. Kevin Owens breezed past NXT. Kevin Owens is barely an NXT superstar at any point. He came in, won his first match in NXT against Juice Robinson, whatever the fuck his name was back then, CJ Parker or something, I don't know, right? He beat the shit out of that guy. And then immediately that same night, he attacked Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn had just won the NXT title. So there it is. The feud has been set. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens was presented as a big deal. He beat the shit out of Sami Zayn, became NXT champion. A few weeks later, or like a month later, he was on whatever Saturday night main event attacking John Cena, right? And then he beats John Cena at the pay-per-view, right? John Cena was the U.S. champion at the time, but he was also John Cena. Kevin Owens beats him, then eventually loses that title to Cuck Balor, and he ends up, motherfuckers, he ends up on the other brand, on SmackDown, or I think it was SmackDown first, maybe Raw, I don't know. The point is, they knew right away, this guy is not going to spend a lot of time in NXT because we can use him. And they treated him accordingly. You know, he was at the height of his career during that time. He became NXT champion really quickly, and he beat John Cena clean. He was the first out of like 5 or 6 wrestlers that next 2 years to beat Cena clean. You know what I mean? He was the first guy to beat Cena clean in like years. This is one of the biggest rubs in the history of wrestling. One of the biggest pushes in the history of wrestling. Now, once he made it to the main roster, people realized that he's fucking shitty. He's not good. He's not good on the mic. People thought that he was good on the mic because he could say clever things about Jim Cornette on ROH. Then, when the fucking shit hit the fan, we realized, oh, Kevin Owens kind of sucks ass on the mic. He's not good at all, you know? And then they're like, oh, okay, shit, what do we do now? We already, like, pushed this guy. We have plans for him. I know. Put him with Jericho, one of the greatest mic talkers of all time. And they do that. And week after week, we have to watch Jericho save this guy. Save Kevin Owens in every promo virtually. There was one where Kevin Owens stumbled like 7 times and Jericho was there to help his ass. Jericho should have gotten a Grammy, right? An Emmy, an Oscar, and a Slammy for what he did for Kevin Owens that year. The facts are what the facts are. Kevin Owens dropped the ball. But look at the way he was pushed from NXT. he did not have a long gestation period in NXT. Now let's look at some other NXT successes, motherfucks. Seth Rollins. All right, Seth Rollins is a weird one because technically Seth Rollins was only on NXT like one time, right? He was on FCW, so it doesn't really count. Seth Rollins, Ambrose, and Roman Reigns debut as the Shield, right? Meanwhile, NXT is rolling. Like, they already started NXT. They already started, pretty much changing FCW to NXT. And then a few weeks later on NXT, there's some tape delays and shit like that, right? Big E comes out, and he's the NXT champ. You know, he had beaten Seth Rollins for the NXT title, and he became the NXT champ. And the Shield come out, right? And Big E's like, Seth Rollins, I beat you for the title. I won you one-on-one. So Seth Rollins is like, okay, fine. Seth Rollins, Big E, not for the NXT title though, right? And Seth Rollins is with like Dean Ambrose and fucking Roman Reigns now, right? Clearly Seth Rollins is the one who's gonna win. Seth Rollins is the one primed for the push. Seth Rollins represents the Shield now, and the Shield needs a win to establish themselves. So they have a match. I don't remember exactly how the match goes. Maybe there was some interference. Long story short, Seth Rollins hits the Seth Walker. Remember that move, motherfuckers? Pins Big E, right? And he establishes himself as a guy that can come back from Raw, or SmackDown, I think it was Raw. He can come back from Raw and beat the shit out of the current NXT champion. He establishes himself as a good wrestler, as a guy who is the future. Then the Shield, right? Talk about minimal time in NXT. Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns didn't even step foot in NXT. They didn't even step foot. Roman Reigns didn't wrestle one match in NXT. That's how you know he's good. They're like, we don't have time to waste putting this guy in NXT. He's not Santos Escobar. He's going to be the next big thing. So we're going to put him directly on TV. Not only that, boom, immediately into the high profile. The Shield immediately, like their first month, like one of the best first months ever. And then their first match, it's like them versus like Sheamus, Bryan, and Kane or something like that. You know what I mean? Like some team of like 3 champions basically, and they beat them. They win, right? They get put over week after week by people like Undertaker, JBL on commentary, etc. You understand me, motherfucks? That's how that shit went down. This is another success story. Big E, for example, I consider him to be like a medium success story. He spent very little time in NXT, comparatively speaking, right? And then he was moved to the main roster, where he became a jobber for a while. Jobbed like all over the place, teamed with Ziggler, eventually joined the New Day. Which, by the way, New Day worked out, but it also could have not worked out, motherfuckers. And he would have been on his way out if it hadn't. You understand me? So like, and he was one of the medium ones. He was an NXT champion and was taken very seriously. Now let's look at all the failures. What do they all have in common? Number one, an inordinate amount of time spent in NXT. Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, to a lesser extent Nakamura, Hideo Itami, all these guys spent a lot of time in NXT. Nakamura is one of the biggest culprits because what happened was Nakamura broke the cycle. I think he's a 2-time NXT champion, right? So is Samoa Joe. Like Samoa Joe beat him once, and then he won the title back again. I was excited when Samoa Joe beat Nakamura. I think he beat Nakamura, right? And won the title himself because I'm like, oh shit, this means Nakamura is going through. He's going to the main roster, cucks. Nope, not what happened. They didn't want him, he sucks. So what happened was Nakamura ended up being a champion again, and by the time he went to WWE, it was too late, honestly. Like he was on SmackDown, people didn't give a fuck. He wrestled Dolph Ziggler, right? Which brings me to point number 3. The treatment and feuds that NXT wrestlers have is directly related to how they will be established in the main roster. Perfect example, Nakamura. His first feud is with Sami Zayn, whatever. At that time, Sami Zayn was considered to be like an upper mid-carder in NXT, maybe even an NXT main eventer. So fine, we can tolerate that shit. Now, look at how he was treated when he went to the main roster. Feud with Ziggler. That's all you need to know. When someone goes to the main roster and their first feud is with Ziggler, that means they are destined to become the next Ziggler. That's all that means, motherfuckers. At maximum, become the next Ziggler. Most likely become the next Tyler Breeze or Bobby Roode. You see what I'm getting at, motherfuckers? This is extremely important. This can be seen with almost everyone that goes from NXT to the main roster. That's why Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins' push, by far the 2 most successful guys, right, from NXT, their push is is in need of being studied. People need to look at these pushes and see what they did in order to make it work, right? And when the push doesn't conform these two pushes, the push of someone else, I mean, it doesn't work. That's why people like Damien Priest are pretty much going nowhere. He might have a chance just because of the fact that he's fucking cool, and also that he is currently involved in a pretty big feud now with Miz and Morrison and Bad Bunny, right? He gets like an asterisk next to his name. But other people like Baron Corbin, they came in wrestling like jabrones. And lo and behold, they became jabrones. Drew McIntyre came in big time. He came in reinvigorating Dolph Ziggler's career. They were presented as a big deal, motherfucks. They were presented as a big deal. He came in as a heel, beat the shit out of everybody like every week. Then he became a jobber for a while. Then eventually he became champion. There is always room to rescue shit. Look at Andrade Almas, right? Andrade comes into NXT, wins a few matches here and there, then starts jobbing to people like Apollo Crews. You know, jobbing left, jobbing right, getting his ass jobbed out, and eventually becomes NXT champion once they tweak his character. But that's very rare. That's very rare. The greatest indicator in wrestling is how you start out. If you start out strong, you're gonna be strong. If you start out like a bitch, your character is gonna be a bitch. Wrestling is not like life, where you can literally pick it up. You know, you can be a loser till you're 60 and still become a success. But in wrestling, you can't do that because people have memories and they look at you and they think, oh, that guy's still a jobber, you know? It happens. It happens, motherfuckers. It happens, but it's rare. It happens like people like Drew McIntyre. Lashley's another example. You know, he's been a jobber essentially for a while. Like he wasn't, you know, this serious contender. And now he's champion and he's a believable champion. It happens. No one's saying it doesn't happen. But think about what I just said. Look at Lashley, right? Look at Lashley. He's a perfect example. What differentiates Lashley from someone like Apollo Crews or Ty Dillinger? The first criterion in this category, motherfucks, time spent in NXT. You get someone like Lashley, you get someone like AJ Styles, even the Good Brothers, you know, who are supposed to be bigger stars than they are. And the argument immediately becomes, we are not putting Lashley on NXT because Lashley is Lashley. And there's no need to put him in NXT. He's already awesome. We have something for him right now. We have something for AJ Styles right now. We have something for the Good Brothers right now, motherfucks. That's the key here. That's the key. The key is the good wrestlers don't even step foot in NXT. But out of the ones that do, the few that make it out are either people like Seth Rollins or Kevin Owens who get pushed to the moon, or people that have very short NXT stints. This explains why NXT has not produced as many great wrestlers as people thought it would. Because the fact is what the fact is. When they send someone to NXT, the implications are this person's going to NXT because he or she is not good enough to be in WWE. So, after a year passes for this person's NXT, unless they show actual improvement, what would be the point? NXT is on the same level as TNA. As a matter of fact, people like Matt Hardy, for example, right, left, went to the Indies, reinvented himself, and then got signed immediately, put directly into a winning position at WrestleMania. You know, no NXT for him. He's over, motherfucks. He's broken Matt. And he has Jeff with him as well. You know, these people are legends. They don't have to go to NXT. You know? That's the key. NXT's problem is exactly that. It treats itself as the jobber brand. And putting a jobber with a jobber title on NXT for 2 years, 3 years even, does not change the fact that they are a jobber. The formula is written in the stars. And you know what? I take back what I said a few seconds ago, that it's impossible or very hard to like capture that magic after you debut. Because look at people like Jinder Mahal. He proved that it can be done. But it won't just happen to you. You have to go out there and bust your ass and maybe do a steroid or two, Jinder Mahal style, motherfucks. I don't know what he did. Point is, he came back jacked. And he came back undeniably changed. Like, you look at him and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is this guy, right? You look at him coming out fighting like Heath Slater, who you know is a jobber. right? And you know Jinder Mahal's a jobber, but your brain cannot get past the fact that Heath Slater is a pudgy little guy, and Jinder Mahal now looks like a fucking penis. He has veins all over him like a penis, motherfucks. So he's out there, and you're like, dude, there's no way that anyone should be able to beat Jinder Mahal, let alone a jobber. And then when you become undeniable, you cannot be denied, motherfucks. But nobody in NXT comes out of NXT undeniable. Not one person in the history of NXT. Not one, not even Rollins. All of these guys should be jobbers. And a lot of them have turned into jobbers. Like Kevin Owens has turned into a jobber. He's a mid-carder now. Seth Rollins is essentially a mid-carder. Like Seth Rollins, when he was WWE champion on Raw, is not the same Rollins as now, who's a mid-carder, right? Like wrestling an undercarder on SmackDown. Not the same thing, cucks. That's what I'm getting at, motherfuckers. That's what I'm getting at. People need to really, really focus on what makes and what doesn't make wrestlers good, and need to really appreciate the trajectory of the wrestler. This I only say because I don't want people to kind of like be disenchanted when their wrestler, the people that they like, end up being jobbers. This is a big problem, I feel like. It happens all the time, you know? I'm sure people are going to be like surprised and sad when Karrion Kross follows the same trajectory. Karrion Kross is already halfway there. He's already been in NXT for a year. He's accomplished nothing in that year. He's been in like one main event. You know, I get it, he's been injured. He's going to be in this other main event, but it won't mean anything. Who cares? Who cares if he's champion of NXT? It means nothing. The NXT title means nothing. Just like the Intercontinental title means nothing. Because there's no prestige. There is no next step. The WWE and Universal titles and all world championships and all wrestling mean something because they are the top of the company. You are the top. There is no further, you know, from this. But the mid-card titles and the lesser titles must provide some sort of platform to get to the next level. And the NXT title doesn't, because the vast majority of NXT champions are jobbers. They're not even like mid-carders. They are jobbers, motherfucks. Like Nakamura and fucking Andrade are jobbers. They're not even they're not even believable U.S. champions. You know, like they might have a U.S. title run, just like the Street Profits may have a tag team title run, but they are not believable. With that being said, who on the horizon has any shot at success? First, it would depend on how you define success. Certain wrestlers are never going to be champion, and they were never meant to be champion. So, for example, Cameron Grimes. I like Cameron Grimes. I think he will be successful, but he will never be WWE champion, most likely. He is not meant to be WWE champion. He is meant to be some sort of like mid-carder, right? Now, anything can change. Anything's possible, but his gimmick, as it stands, does not, I repeat, motherfuckers, does not scream main eventer to me. People that might want to be considered as main eventers would involve people like Karrion Kross, Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole, Finn Balor, fucking, who else? L.A. Knight, you know, these types of guys. And I believe, unfortunately, that none of these guys will become main eventers. Like serious ones. I don't think any of them are ever going to be a world champion. But sure as shit, they're not going to become main eventers. They will become like Baron Corbin's. You know, they will have a Baron Corbin career. Like, can Baron Corbin one day win the world title? Yes. Does it look like it'll happen? No. He's still Baron Corbin. You know what I mean? But anything's possible, right? And this breaks my heart, motherfucks. It breaks my heart because I like LA Knight. I think out of all the Bobby Roode, EC3, MJF type wrestlers, he's the best one right now. I mean, Bobby Roode was obviously better, but he's already been tarnished. But the problem is this. LA Knight has the Bobby Roode career written out for him. His first feud is going to be with Bronson Reed, who is NXT's version of Dolph Ziggler. He's the gatekeeper. He's the jobber. You know? He's going to beat Bronson Reed, obviously, in a match that no one wants. And then what's going to happen? What's going to happen then, cucks? What's going to happen with fucking LA Knight? Who's he going to wrestle next? It's going to be like someone on the level of Finn Balor or Adam Cole, but someone who's not champion. You know, maybe like a Pete Dunne type of shit, right? And then what? Then he might become world champion. Then he'll go to SmackDown or Raw, where he will be wrestling and defeating someone like Nakamura, someone like Ziggler, Bobby Roode perhaps, Andrade if he comes back. These types of guys. He will beat like Cedric Alexander. He might beat Matt Riddle if Matt Riddle has fallen down. during that time. You know? And then what's going to happen? That's it. That's it, motherfuckers. That's going to be the end of his career. He's not going to main event WrestleMania. None of this shit's going to happen. Because there is nothing there that is special. And this is coming from a guy that likes LA Knight. But there's nothing there that's any different from Bobby Roode. You have to differentiate yourself. And I understand, with these gimmicks, that's not possible. Because they're generic gimmicks. They're not these well thought out gimmicks. The LA Knight gimmick, the Bobby Roode gimmick are not well thought out gimmicks. You know, they're not like, for example, Dexter Lumis is actually a well thought out gimmick. These gimmicks will not carry the wrestler. Then the next question becomes, are these wrestlers exceptionally great wrestlers? And the answer is they're not. Like, LA Knight is good. Bobby Roode is pretty great. But they're not Kurt Angle. They're not Shawn Michaels. They're not doing these incredible things. They're doing very basic mid-risk moves, like suplexes and things of that nature. You know, they're not out there doing cool shit like lifting 500-pounders or, you know, jumping off of ladders and shit like that. These are the things that make you stick out. That's why people like Jeff Hardy, Darby Allin right now, you know, John Cena. That's why they stick out, because they're either doing crazy shit or doing incredible feats of strength. Bobby Roode and LA Knight are doing neither of those. LA Knight's finisher is like a snap face buster. You know? He's a big guy with like a fucking Dean Ambrose finisher, you know? So whatever, it is what it is. Wasn't this also the finisher of EC3? Wasn't that it? I think it was, right? He has an EC3 finisher. It's already over for him. So there you have it, motherfucks. You know, that's what I gotta say about that. This is a wrap. I don't see anything good in his future. The only people in NXT that have a chance, in my opinion, are and still remain Cameron Grimes, Dexter Lumis, and if he comes back and becomes serious, Velveteen Dream. Velveteen Dream was obviously derailed by a lot of the shit, a lot of the accusations and things like that. He's someone that can be in NXT for multiple years and come out on top, because he is someone that is young as shit. So it's understandable. If he joins the main roster when he's like 27, it's all good, motherfuckers. It's all good. So there you have it. That's what I gotta say about that. NXT, the future is looking bleak. And if this is all they do, is sign the next LA Knight and put him in an LA Knight situation, you will never find your main star that way. You will never find him. Think about it. How much success have people like Lashley and AJ Styles had compared to people that have had to go to NXT? Exactly, motherfucks. Exactly. I rest my case, cucks.